Good morning and welcome to the STS-134 post-launch news conference. It's always a thrill to be here after we've launched a shuttle, and the gentlemen who are here with us today will tell us all about it. I'm very pleased to introduce to my left Mr. Bill Gerstenmaier, NASA's Associate Administrator for Space Operations.
Good morning.
Michel Tonini, Head of the European Astronaut Center and a former ESA astronaut.
Good morning.
Mike Moses, he's our Shuttle Launch Integration Manager and Chairman of the Pre-Launch Mission Management Team.
Good morning.
And Mike Leinbach, Shuttle Launch Director.
Good morning, everybody.
We'll be happy to take your questions after we begin with opening comments, and we'll begin with Mr. Gerstenmaier.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be here, and I can't thank the team that got this vehicle ready to fly enough for all the work they've done. It was tremendous to see the launch today, to see the countdown go as smoothly as it did. The APU heater problem, the teams really worked hard to get through that and get that behind us and understand what the problem was, and there was no problem to us at all during the count. And the count was very smooth throughout the day, and Mike and Michael talked to you a little bit more about the count, but it went extremely well. The vehicle looked very good going uphill. We had a little thing on the center main engine, a measurement that's used to calculate some offline performance. It went out of calibration, or went out of range, and then went back in and worked fine the rest of the way. It wouldn't have been a concern to us. We saw a couple little foam events on the external tank. We saw 2 small losses just prior to the aerodynamic sensitive time. That's where we're worried about foam coming off the tank and potentially having enough velocity to damage the orbiter. Those were very small losses. They didn't look like they went anywhere near the orbiter. They were very, very small and looked pretty benign. We had two losses very late on the tank, around 5 minutes and 12 seconds and 5 minutes and 39 seconds. And again, those look like they're no problem to us at all. So the tank performance was probably better than I expected. We knew we didn't make some modifications to some of the ice frost ramps, so we expected to see probably some more losses in those regions late in the flow. We didn't see them. We'll get the images from the umbilical well, and that'll show us what the tank really looks like, and then we can talk more definitively about how well the tank performed. But it looked pretty good from the initial video we saw. So again, I want to thank the team for all the efforts they put in to keep their heads down, to stay focused, to make this launch a success. The mission in front of us is no easy mission. The EVAs will be very demanding. We're going to have the Soyuz undock in the middle of the mission, which will make it a little bit tougher for the teams to plan around and work that. The sleep shifting of the 2 crews will be a challenge for the folks on orbit, but I think they're prepared. They've got a good plan in place. It'll be exciting to see the AMS get installed on station and get ready to start taking some real research data for the ISS. So again, thanks to the teams and thanks to all the folks that made this launch happen. Michel?
Okay, thank you. A lot has been said about this mission, STS-134. It has been delayed, but very successful today. This flight brings to space a very important payload, AMS, which is an alpha magnetic spectrometer, and a very special crew, because there is one ESA astronaut from Italian nationality, Roberto Vittori, on board this space shuttle. I think it's one of the first times that we send an experiment made by a Nobel Prize, and this is a way to meet our objective, which is to make the space station available for great science. And this is what we will perform, because I just talked to Manuel Samuel-Ting 1 hour ago. We will have the result of AMS right after the launch in a few days, and it is very important. This mission also marks a very long cooperation between ESA and NASA, because when I look at all the Flight 134 missions made with NASA, I think 85 or 86 missions were made in cooperation between NASA and ESA, either by ESA astronaut or by ESA pilot. So it's really important, and this allowed us to have a nice experiment since the beginning with Space Lab and then with Columbus, and allow us to have a big part of the space station made by a European contribution. So this cooperation, successful, is essential for the future of human exploration. We believe in it. And I would like to thank NASA to have allowed us to participate to so many missions. And also I have this morning talked to Roberto Vittori. I have to express the thanks of Roberto to have him flying on the space shuttle. Altogether with Roberto Vittori, it will be 24 ESA astronauts flying on the space shuttle. And there will be also a very important time this week because at the same moment we will have Roberto Vittori, his astronaut, and Paolo Nespoli, also his astronaut, together on the space station during a few days before the landing of the mission with Paolo on the 23rd of May. So again, we showed together our determination to succeed in a very complex endeavor with this mission of Endeavour, and this is fundamental for the future of human exploration. Thank you.
Well, folks, it was a fantastic launch, a really great day for us. A good example of us watching the weather and getting right down to our flight rule and our launch commit criteria limits. And you can see that we don't have any flight rules or launch commit criteria that dictate how long you can see the launch before it goes out of sight. So apologize that the view wasn't the best, but the data we were looking at in the control center was absolutely perfect, and we weren't going to wait around any longer for an opening to come up. We had the clouds where we needed them, and so we went. So it was a really good work by the team today. Mike's launch team did fantastic. Pretty straightforward countdown. We had a repeat of a problem in the ohm system, and problem is a stretch a condition that we knew about, where we had to kind of balance some pressures up, and we talked that and got that worked out. Mike's team had a challenging yesterday with the high winds, with the thruster covers coming off a few of the thrusters, and discussing whether we were going to have rain overnight or not, and do we need to worry about it or not. And they made a really good call to kind of stare it on the face of the clouds, and we didn't get any rain. Really good weather forecasting from the Cape weather side of the house with Kathy Winters, and so we were in good shape today. And then literally it was just kind of seeing how the weather was going to shape up. For a while there, it was looking great. When the sun came up, the deck started building pretty fast and coming right at us. But then it kind of dissipated real fast as the sun heated up the upper layers. And what you saw was a ceiling right around a little higher than 5,000 feet, but not very thick, which satisfies our rules, both on the shuttle side and on the range side for safety reasons. And we were able to launch today. And as Bill said, you saw just a couple of issues on ascent. The center main engine thing, that was not anything the crew noticed. It was an internal measurement. And so now they're up getting the ship ready to start orbit operations, and it is going to be a very challenging mission. We added 2 extra days, so this is now a 16-day long mission. And the sleep shift with 25S is one of those challenges. To give you some of the details, on flight day 3 we'll be docking, and when we do that, the station crew will be going to sleep about 2 hours later than the shuttle crew. So they'll be going to bed a little bit later, therefore waking up a little later. By the time we get to flight day 7, which is EVA 2, the station crew will be sleeping in to the point where about an hour or 2 into the EVA, the station crew will be waking up. And we've taken a look at that. They're going to be in their sleep stations with hearing protection on, all kind of buttoned up. They won't notice the EVA activity going on, and everything's fine. And then flight day 8 is an off-duty day, which we inserted specifically to allow the station crew. They when a Soyuz undocks, they sleep shift about 12 hours back one way and undock, because with the Soyuz, about 3 or 4 hours after undocking, they land. So they have a very long day to get up, get ready, get buttoned up in the Soyuz, undock, and then immediately land. So they have to kind of sleep shift themselves back about a whole day, or a half a day, I should say. And so we'll put an off-duty day for everybody in there to allow them to shift. And then on flight day 9, that'll be the actual Soyuz undocking on the 23rd of May. And in that case, the Soyuz crew will be getting up and leaving about an hour before the shuttle crew gets up. So there's a lot of numbers there, but basically they're all within the two-hour overlap of each other, sleeping in, getting up, and in both crews' day, we give them about 2 to 2.5 hours of what we call pre-sleep and post-sleep, where they're not scheduled for a lot of heavy activities. It's literally the getting ready for bed or waking up activities, getting your breakfast and getting cleaned up and ready to start the day, gathering up your materials. And so even though there's some overlap in the sleep periods, they're not going to be doing a lot of heavy activity while they're in that overlap period. So again, the teams were very comfortable with that timeline. Before we dock, we'll be doing our Flight Day 2 inspections. We'll get the OBSS out. On this mission, we'll probably have some extra stuff to look for. If you've been driving around the area, you know we've had a little bit of an explosion in the love bug population, so want to make sure the nose cap doesn't have any extra love bugs on it. And then on Flight Day 3, after docking, the crew will get the robotics activities underway right away by installing the ELC-3 payload over on station. Flight Day 4, we'll get AMS over to station right away and get it started up. 4 EVAs, like Bill mentioned. This mission, again, one of the objectives is to leave that OBSS, orbital boom sensor system, behind, and so we'll do our inspection that we normally do after undocking on this mission. We'll do it while we're docked, and then there'll be an EVA right after that to then leave that boom on the station. And after we undock, we won't have the boom to do any inspections, but we'll have already cleared the orbiter for entry. So again, an action-packed mission. The crews are going to be very, very busy, very challenging. But as has been said, I can't thank the teams enough. The team here in Florida and the support teams around the country that got us through the APU heater problem, got us back on track, and brought us to launch today, did an amazing job. We talked about ET-122's performance and how fantastic it was, and really wanted to take a second to recognize the two other propulsion elements that we haven't been talking about a lot, and I'm really happy that we haven't been talking about them a lot, but the main engines and the solid rocket booster teams, those systems continue to perform just flawlessly. A really good testament to all the ground tests we do ahead of time, both in both those programs, to really characterize and understand how we fly, so that when we do fly, we know exactly what environment we're in. So a really excellent job by the entire program. So that's all I had. It was a good day. Happy to be in orbit.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Well, let's see, I would characterize the countdown today as a very normal countdown for us. It was not problem-free, but what that allows is the team to work a few problems and get in sync and solve a couple problems along the way. One of the things you don't really like to have in a launch countdown for the shuttle program is a completely clean countdown. And I know that may sound a little odd, but if there are no problems in the countdown, you're sitting there waiting for the big problem to happen. And so that obviously didn't happen today. We had a couple little things to talk about. Mike mentioned a couple of them. We had another little tile issue on the side hatch that got a lot of attention. But after the issue we had maybe 2 flights or so ago, we have a new process in place where we carry out a camera in there. It's the same camera used for crew strap-in that you guys watch. And we're able to get a good zoomed-in picture of that little tile damage and put some top coat slurry on it, and it was good to go. So it got a lot of attention, but that was a very minor repair, and it should perform perfectly fine. The countdown was great. One thing I get to do as a launch director is give an award at the end of the day. And today we gave it to the combined APU retest team. And it was the head of our quality inspectors, the head of the vehicle shops, an OEL engineering, an orbit electrical engineering representative, and then of course one from the auxiliary power unit group. And those 4 folks represented literally hundreds of people, thousands of people probably across the country that helped solve that problem. And so you get to see the team work to their best today. It was an outstanding countdown. A lot of pats on the back down in the lobby of the LCC afterwards as we were eating our beans and cornbread. And so it was just a good day. Endeavour's on orbit safely, and it's going to perform a great mission, and we'll see her back here on June 1st. So great day here at the Kennedy Space Center and for the shuttle program.
All right, we will take questions. We ask for you to please wait for the microphone, state your name and affiliation, and to whom you're addressing your question. And we'll start over here in the front row with Seth Bornstein.
Seth Bornstein, AP. For Mike Moses, 2 quick ones. First, on the sleep shifting, in terms of waking and disturbing the crews, which is the greater concern, the station crew being disturbed by the shuttle crew, or the shuttle crew being disturbed by the station crew? And is there a time period that you're most worried? I mean, a certain day or task, that you're leading up to, or noisy task that you think will be the issue? And the second one is, for either of the 2 mics, is, do you remember any time that there was such a short view with such low clouds of, I counted 22 seconds is all you could see?
Let's see, on the sleep shifts, no specific concerns. The toughest day in terms of making sure we're kind of staying out of each other's way is going to be flight day 7, flight day 8, which will be the day before we undock. Both crews will have off duty, so they won't have a lot of reasons to go banging around making noise. But in general, the shuttle crew doesn't just stay in the shuttle and close the door and not come out, but some of them sleep over on the station side. Station's pretty big now. It's a pretty big internal volume. In node 2, which is the first node right there, the U.S. segment crew on station right now, Paulo and Katie Coleman, Paulo Nespoli and Katie Coleman, have their sleep stations. So they'll be in their sleep stations right there, and you have to pass through node 2 to go get to the airlock to get to the robotics workstations up in the cupola. So the shuttle crew will have to kind of pass through the area, but they're not going to be doing a lot of work in Node 2. They'll basically literally be transitioning past. And then it's noisy enough in the background. It's kind of like if you're used to the background noise already when you're sleeping, you're not going to notice too much different. The crew uses earplugs, and they're kind of buttoned up in their sleep station to block out the light. So they've both taken a look, and they don't think they're going to have any problems. So no specific concerns. If with a 2-hour overlap, that's manageable. If it was going to be more like 4 hours, then that would be rather tricky because now you're impacting a fair bit of the workday. But this one's not going to be too bad at all. And I think they'll be okay. But if I was going to pick one day that's going to be tough, it's the day we added a whole day just to do nothing, which is the day before they undock. So we intentionally made that a down day to help alleviate that problem.
Well, let's see. Relative to the low clouds, this was one of the quickest disappearances of a shuttle that I've experienced. And but we have the rules in place for valid engineering reasons and range safety reasons. And since the clouds were so low this time, I can almost guarantee that you'll see Atlantis longer for STS-135.
Right here on the front row.
Randy Siegel, WSTU Radio, for Bill Gerstenmaier. Bill, this is really going to be the last part of the space station that the U.S. is building. What are your thoughts concerning the fact that we're going to have a completed station? And also, what about the flyabout? How do we stand with that?
Okay. In terms of station completion, I think it's really nice to see the AMS get taken up on this flight. This is a really, as Michelle said, a world-class instrument that's been built to go take a look at dark matter, antimatter, those kind of things, and it fits very well with Space Station. Space Station gives it long observation times, can store a lot of data, return the data to the ground. So I think this is a pretty special way to kind of cap this sequence of flights to bring the AMS up on this flight of Endeavour. So I think that's pretty exciting and a good way to kind of go forward. And then the other question is the flyabout. What we're doing now is we'll have the teams take a look at the undock sequence, and the Russians will provide us what the profile will be for the flyabout, and then the station team will take a look at that flyabout and make sure that all looks fine. We think it will. We'll let the mission management team that's actually managing the mission make the decision about whether that flyabout occurs and when it occurs and how it's done. They'll do that through their normal processes. So the first thing was for us to get launched. We'll get docked to station. Then they'll start working through the routine, see how the missions are going, see how the EVA activities are going. We'll get the actual proposal of what the technical details of the fly around are. The station teams will evaluate that, provide a recommendation back to the mission management team, and then they'll decide officially to go ahead and add that flyabout to the mission.
Chris.
Chris Gebhardt with NASASpaceflight.com. Yeah, words almost can't describe how beautiful that was this morning, but I think talking about it in terms of what the teams have done in the past couple weeks is the best way to do that, so thank you. For, a couple quick questions. The first relating to the right ohms pressure indication, was it identical to what you saw on the first attempt back on April 29th? And if so, why did this one also require a waiver if it was a known condition? And can you also talk a little bit more, if possible, about the main engine sensor and what exactly that was monitoring and what it did during flight?
Sure. So the ohms condition is basically we have two separate limits on that tank that we're monitoring. One is the total pressure in the tank. You want to make sure it doesn't get so high that it would activate the relief valve, which is actually protected by a burst disc. So the burst disc would be the first thing to go, and then the relief valve would open up so that you don't overpressurize that tank. The other limit you're trying to protect is that the tank pressure in the oxidizer tank and the tank pressure in the fuel tank aren't too far apart from each other. These are pressure-fed engines in the ohms system, and so when they initially start up, you don't want more of one propellant than the other showing up or at a higher pressure, kind of pushing the combustion off to one side or the other. And so there's a delta limit between the two tanks, a delta pressure limit. On top of all that, we protect for instrumentation error, and in fact, in this case, it's a pretty big instrumentation error, a 15 psi bias for instrumentation. And so it's multiple fold. The problem we had last launch attempt was due to some regulator creep. The regulators and the valves naturally leak helium just a little bit. In this case, it's a little bit more, but it's still within spec. The ox tanks have a set of valves that close those off where the fuel tanks don't. So that leaking pressure builds up in the fuel tank but not the oxidizer tank. That further gets exacerbated when we have a full load of ohms, and this is a little fuller than normal. There's not a lot of ullage pressure in the tank to absorb that pressure delta, so you see the pressure go up pretty high. And then one more thing is that the oxidizer likes to absorb helium, and therefore it drops the pressure in that tank. So you have the fuel pressure going up and the oxidizer pressure going down naturally. And after we sat for a while, they kind of got themselves close to that 15 psi delta limit. The reality is the actual transducer biases on this tank were 1.5 psi, not 15. So if you added that in, you could say that we weren't anywhere near our actual true limits. But by the letter of the law, the LCC requires you to not count on that just in case that deucer drifted on you. And so we went ahead and talked about it. On the first launch attempt, the easy thing to do was to tie the right tank to the left tank. It had a little different pressure in it that kind of balanced the two out, brought the numbers within limits. Because we did that last time, this time there wasn't as much room to do that because we had already balanced those tanks up. And so we had the waiver ready to go because we knew we probably wouldn't be able to get them back in limits. And that's exactly what happened when we went to tie them together. They did balance up, but went to a 16 psi delta instead of I think we had 14 last time. Again, knowing that the true actual delta was perfectly well within limits, the waiver basically said if you account for instrumentation error, you don't have to worry about it. And then we added on top of it a whole bunch of off-nominal testing that shows the true delta pressure limit is somewhere in the 30 psi range, not 15. And so we were well acceptable there. So long-winded story to say we basically did lots of homework to protect us from the letter of the law that said you got to be careful not to launch there, made sure we really understood it before we went. On the center main engine, it was a low pressure, on the low pressure fuel turbopump, one of the discharge outlet pressures, there's two of them, an A and a B channel. The B channel dropped off, and so it basically dropped out for a couple milliseconds and then it came back, but that was enough for the onboard fault detection system to say, I don't trust you anymore, I'm throwing you out of the equation. And so we got a ground fault on the ground, nothing to the crew or anything like that. That pressure goes into an internal calculation that's basically measuring the density and the flow rates to try to calculate an internal flow through that turbopump. If we would have lost the other one, it would have faulted down to a default measurement rather than the actual real-time measurement. And it's really just I don't want to say an after-the-fact data calculation, but it's not used in any real-time performance in the engine. It's just it's not even a health monitoring system either. It's just a data point that we gather on engine operation.
Robert?
Hi, Robert Perlman with CollectSpace.com with a question for Mike Leinbach. Since you mentioned presenting an award, were you presented anything by the closeout crew or others as you were on the last flight of Discovery? And what have you done, if anything, to mark this last flight of Endeavour with your launch team? Thanks.
Well, let's see. I was honored with the Endeavour side hatch emblem, the name emblem on the side hatch, signed by both the flight crew and the closeout crew. And so that's 2 out of the 3, I guess you could say. So that was a very nice surprise. And the closeout crew named me an honorary member of the closeout team today. They gave me a little plaque with a patch. And you know, I know those guys pretty well. And Travis Thompson came in the firing room and gave me both items. And that was really special to be recognized like that as a member of their team. That meant a lot. I'll cherish that forever. You know, the final flight of Endeavour, we're going to wait for her to come home, and then we'll celebrate some special way. But today was all about getting the countdown right, getting Mark and his crew on orbit safely, and we did that, and we're proud of that.
Jim Siegel, Celebration Independent Newspaper. 2 questions, perhaps for Mike and Mike. First of all, could you talk a little bit more about the weather condition at time of launch, and how close a call was it in terms of if it had been 30 seconds earlier or later? Was the cloud situation or other factors? Could that have eliminated the possibility of a launch today? And then my other question has to do with adding 2 additional days to this flight. Does that mean that there's less margin at the end of the flight in case landing conditions aren't right? And would you have to make some other decisions or decision criteria for deciding whether to land or not at the end of the flight? Thank you.
Let's see, on the clouds, the weather was actually never no-go. It was never forecast no-go, and I don't think it was ever observed no-go. The RTLS landing forecast was always a go forecast. They did amend it. The initial forecast just called for a few clouds or a scattered deck rather, at 3,500 feet, and so they amended that to put the deck scattered up at 5,000 as well. But that's a go forecast, and same thing with the range. Whether it's the same, they're looking for. In this case, it's a 6,000 foot deck or a 4,000 foot deck with clouds less than 500 feet thick. And we never dropped below our 5,000 limits for RTLS or any of the range limits. We had our weather recon aircraft up, the STA, flown by CJ Sturkow. It was a good 30 minutes out. He was able to basically characterize the patterns he'd been seeing all day long, and able to give us the go well early. That nothing out of the ordinary. So he moved off to his orbit position. Same thing with the SMG guys. Their forecast held true to the observations all day long, as did Kathy Winter's forecast at the launch pad. So there really wasn't. This was not a close one on the weather. It was well within limits, and it wasn't really moving on us at all. Really, what it was going to come down to is we knew that thick band was going to come over the LCC right around launch time. It was going to be a go thick band, but it would limit our ability to see the shuttle off the pad, as it ended up doing. On the mission, no, we still have our standard 2 days of extension for systems problems or for weather extension. We always carry a +2 to be able to handle any weather for landing. In this case, the extra +2 that we added were 2 extra days by having extra O2 on board. We had originally planned to offload some oxygen, some of the O2, which we use in our fuel cells to generate power for the shuttle. As we got closer to actual launch day, we were able to look at the actual weights of payloads, the actual weights on the middeck, the actual weather conditions of the day, the temperatures that the boosters would be at, and discovered we had a little more ascent performance margin than we had predicted, and so we elected to turn that into extra cryo. So instead of taking the O2 off to be less weight, we decided we could launch with a little more weight this time, so we left that extra O2 in the ship, which allowed us to get extra days on orbit. In this case, we knew we were at a 14-day mission, 2 extra energy days, and then 2 extra weather days. So we turned those 2 energy days into planned days. So we went to a 16 + 0 + 2 mission. So,
and I just might add a little bit to the weather discussion too. For the launch weather side of it, there are really 2 categories of launch weather commit criteria. One is for the shuttle program itself, and one is for range safety. And the range safety piece of it allows a forward observer in an aircraft. And today we had that observer north of the pad, which makes sense which way the clouds were going. And as long as they can verify they have good visibility, then if something goes wrong, they can radio back to the range safety officer and to take the right action. So that's permitted by the rules. We do it often, and it worked just beautifully today. And just by way of example, I forget the mission number, but 3 or 4 years or so ago, I believe it was, we scrubbed for a cloud deck that was 600 feet thick. Our criteria is 500 feet. Today we were 500 feet, and so we were exactly right on the criteria, and we were good to go. If we had been another 100 or 200 feet thick, we'd still be on the ground. And so the process works extremely well. We practice it, and today it worked out very, very well for us.
Clara?
Clara Moskowitz for Space.com. And my question is, now that this mission has launched, can you tell us the latest thinking and what kind of considerations you're going to have to weigh to arrive at a launch date for 135?
We can.
Yeah, I can take that one.
Yeah, you.
Okay. So like we've been telling you, we kind of need to wait and see. We want to be pretty specific with this launch date since it's our last one. So we're going to go out and evaluate the damage at the pad and see what it takes to turn that around, and if it fits within our 14-day template that we have arranged. And then we basically expect this week to be able to get that assessment, finalize what we've been looking at, and then narrow that down to an exact launch date. We're falling in the middle of that. In the second week in July, there's a Delta launch on the range on the 14th. We got to talk to them, see if they're having any troubles that they might be moving. We want to be able to plan ahead if we can at this point, although a month and a half out on the range is never really planning ahead. So, but we'll give it a try this week and see what we get, but I suspect we'll pick a date by the end of the week or early next week.
Yeah, and we'll probably watch a little bit of orbiter performance on orbit and see if we see anything in orbiter performance that makes us question or think about what we're going to do before the next launch. So we'll wait a little bit, maybe the end of this week, maybe next week. We'll actually set the date after we work all the parameters that Mike just talked about.
Okay, over here.
John Bisney, Sirius XM Satellite Radio for Mike Leinbach. Give us a post-launch report, if you will, on that APU heater circuit. I'm sure you were hawking it pretty closely. Anything anomalous there? And if not, does that give you increased confidence that the damage insulation might have been the culprit?
Well, let's see. We went through our troubleshooting plan as we proposed to the program, pre-launch, where we swapped. We came up on the B side heaters, which are the ones that had the problem before. This was after we got into stable replenish on the external tank, so the aft was about as cold as it was going to get. That worked fine. We switched over to the A side, which worked fine last countdown, worked it fine again today, and we swapped back to B and we launched in B. So we went through our process and everything checked out just to the letter of the law. And so does it prove that was that little open on the back of the connector? Not quite sure. Probably never exactly know, but we know we fixed it and it worked perfectly fine today.
Back there.
Hi, Eben Brown, Fox News Radio for Mr. Gerstenmaier, Mr. Moses, and Mr. Leinbach. This is the second final mission for one of the orbiters. We had Discovery already. Is it any easier this time around for you guys emotionally? Last time we actually saw little tears here and there, but is it, since you've been through one of these final missions already, is it any easier on you?
You said your name first.
Yeah, thanks. I would say no, in simple words. I think the thing that's the real tribute is I've really challenged the team and challenged all of us to treat each one of these missions as much as we can just like a regular mission. So our job is to look at the flight rules, look at our procedures, look at our launch countdown. Everything we do, I want it to feel just like this isn't the last mission, but this is one of many missions to go forward. So I've been challenging the teams to do that, and they've done a tremendous job of being able to stay focused, to watch what's going on, and to be the true experts that really make this look a lot easier than it really is. So again, I think the thing that I feel is I feel a real privilege to be considered part of this team that has pulled this off, because what you've seen today was not easy. It's not easy for us to get this vehicle ready to go fly. It wasn't easy to find the problem with the APU and to be meticulous and to slowly work through that problem and to take the time that it needed to get it worked. We worked the issues during the count in a very methodical manner, as Mike described. We adhered to our flight rules for weather just like we're supposed to, and we launched a great vehicle to orbit. We've got a huge challenge in front of us in terms of the mission. We'll see how that goes. When we get Endeavour back, then we can rest a little bit with Endeavour, but then we've got another one after that, and our job is to, again, stay focused, make it look just like every other flight, keep moving forward with all the distractions that are going on the outside in terms of things that are real impacts to the employees and other folks. So again, I think the thing that I carry away from this mission more than any other is just the wonderful job that the teams have done to really give us a quality vehicle and to give us a great ascent today. So Mike?
I'm not sure I can add much more, Bill. I think you wrapped that up pretty good.
So I'll add one thing to it since you asked. And there are several of us that get to work each vehicle, and that's a lot of fun, and we enjoy what we do. But there's only one Endeavour processing team, people who work solely Endeavour. So this was their only final launch. Those folks are looking back on the history of Endeavour with fondness and probably a few tears today. But that's okay, because they know they did the best job they could, and Endeavour is safely on orbit. So they did a great job, and one by one, each team is going to have their final flight.
Over here.
Doug Deco, Knox Magazine and Lofty Ambition Science Blog. Question for Michelle about the AMS. After the installation, can you characterize the validation period for the detector, and how soon can scientists actually on the Earth side start beginning to receive data?
So, I am not a designer of AMS, so I can give you just what I have learned, like everybody else has learned. They will check right after Endeavour is on orbit that the system is working properly, and the first result of AMS will be given after AMS is installed on the truss of ISS, and a few hours after it is installed, so it will be this week.
Todd?
Todd Halverson of Florida Today for Mike or Mike. You mentioned that there was a heavy cryo load on board. It seemed to me that the orbiter was kind of slow getting off the pad. I don't know if you
felt that way also, but was that because it was a heavier vehicle? And also, could you talk about the timing of the STS-135 rollout and the STS-134 landing if they happen as currently scheduled? How is that all going to come together?
See, I can take the first part. So no, we weren't any heavier than normal of a typical launch. When I say heavier, the reason why we were able to take more cryo is because other things weighed less. So from a total liftoff weight, we were in family to what we normally lift off with. As far as it seeming like you get off the pad slower, to me personally, it did, but that's because I configured the TV wrong. I always like to watch all three main engines, see the shock waves go through before I turn around and look out the window, and I had the wrong channel up, TV channel. So to me, it was gone before I even turned around, but so it was still going pretty fast for me.
You need some remedial training.
I do need some training, yes.
It's time for the next time.
And let's see, the landing versus rollout question. As we said the other day, there are two separate crews to do that, so we can perform both essentially in the same day. And the way it is scheduled, if it does indeed play out this way, is Atlanta should be rolling out at 8 p.m. on the 31st of May, and Endeavour would be landing at about 2:30 in the morning on June the 1st, and we can do both perfectly fine, and that'll be a special day for the program and for the Kennedy Space Center.
Randy Avera with Interspace News. This question for Michelle. The alpha magnetic spectrometer stands poised to be one of the most historic instruments ever placed in orbit, and therefore a very historic flight and mission for the Endeavour. Could you elaborate on dark matter, dark energy, and antimatter? If this instrument does in fact make detections that lead to a discovery and a direct observation and validation of dark matter, energy, and antimatter, what do you see as the effect of that on our society and certainly on the physics community and the astronomy community and scientists around the world?
Well, in fact, if we find any subscientific results, first we will validate the fact that ISS was made to make great science. That was a goal since years and years that we fly in space, not only with ISS, but previously with the mission on Salyut and Mir. We always try to say that we go to space to make good science. So now we do make this good science with AMS, because this is very, very different from what we did before. After we get the result, it takes a lot of time. When you get the result, it gets a lot of time to elaborate and to work on the result and to find the correspondent. But it is sure that we will find, in any case, we will find things that we have never seen before. So the interpretation of these results after, it's up to the scientists to talk about that. But I think it's a very important science, and it's very, very different from what we have seen before.
In the back of the room?
Christopher Sign with the ABC affiliate in Phoenix, Arizona. I know that this has been a very special day on many levels, and I know that you've always had special guests, and this for Bill, Mike, or Mike. I know you've had many special guests over the years. Can you talk about what it was like having Congresswoman Giffords here? You all know what happened and what that was like for you guys today.
Let's see. From the unfortunately clinical side of the house, we're locked up in the firing room doing our jobs, so the crew families are in a different location. They're actually in the Launch Control Center, and they go up on the roof to watch. So we don't ever get to see them, greet them, or know they're there. And in this case, I think they had actually even left before we were released from console. So from actually getting to experience that today, I personally, and I don't think any of us up here had the chance to even see her. But conceptually, having her here is just as important as every other family member. To have them here, and especially the kids, one of the traditions is they, while they're waiting for launch, they set up a whiteboard and markers for them, and the kids get to draw their version of the mission patch and messages to mom or dad, and then we take them and we put a cover of them and we hang them in the halls in the control center in Mike's building, and it serves a lot of things. It shows you how much this is a family thing and a personal thing, and then it's a good reminder to us as we walk by that there's people's lives here in what we're doing, and it reminds us to do good work. But so from that standpoint, very happy to have her here as a crew family. But if you just think of her story, it's a pretty remarkable testament to human will and recovery to be able to come back from something like that and travel here twice and finally get to see her husband fly in space.
As it's Warren Ellie with WTVT, the Fox station in Tampa. Maybe you can help us, gentlemen, with something we saw. I can't explain it. Leading edge, left wing, white spot in the black in the carbon. It's about 8 minutes 43 seconds in. We see it at the SEP of the main tank. We also see it on the ground as the orbiter sits on the ground. So it's possible there was some discoloration. Didn't look like love bugs, but just wondering if anybody saw that.
I think it was your residue.
No, do we want to talk?
We'll go look and see.
I'm not sure what that was.
I saw it in the video also. I think we had a new RCC panel or a different RCC panel. That's a reinforced carbon panel on that wing leading edge, possibly. I saw it. It was lighting. It's nothing to be concerned of. It's just the fact that the entire panel was a different shade is what I saw. When I saw it when the sun rolled and the orbiter rolled over, I don't think it's anything. It's just a different way the light was shining that panel, and maybe a little bit different age than the other panels. And you see some variation between the RCC panels. There's like 12 of them or so on each side, maybe more on each side. And each one is unique, and they have different histories. So I don't think there's anything there. But we saw it in the video, and then the teams will look at it some more. But I don't think it's anything more than just the difference in lighting.
I would say Bill's hitting on the thing that the camera angles really do trick you. The bright light from the sun as you roll, you see something that looks really bad. Even in orbit, when we take the pictures, you'll look at it from the regular standard camera on the end of the boom, and it'll look like a bright white, which means the black coating of the tile has been chipped away. But then when you look at the high-res picture from the digital camera, you see that it's this little tiny thread that just happened to catch the light and reflect right back at the camera. So a lot of optical illusions. So that's why we do the very detailed inspections. We wait until we get the data, and we really analyze the actual data rather than just what we saw in the original camera.
We could see it on the ground as well. Before the orbiter launched, you could see it.
Yeah, and so we have baseline photos of what we looked like before we lift off, and the teams will compare that to what we got on orbit to be able to tell if it's existing problems or new problems.
Thank you, Joe.
Chris?
Chris Gebhardt with NASASpaceflight.com again, and actually a perfect segue. With leaving the OBSS on station, last time we had to do this on STS-123, great care was taken to protect those sensor packages on the end of the boom because they would be needed on the next flight. Since that's not the reason the boom's being left, what becomes of the sensor packages on the end of it? Are they going to be left on the boom, or are they going to be removed and brought back on Endeavour?
The plan is to leave them in place. They will not be powered on orbit, so thermally they will. The components will not survive very long, probably on the order of a couple of hours, maybe a day in some cases. But there's no plan to ever use those sensors again. But one thing we are doing, and we've actually done it already, is we outfitted the boom with some extra Velcro wraps so that if the need is to run a cable, so at a future time station wants to put a camera system or a sensor system on the end of the boom, they'd be able to take those sensors off, put new ones on, and then run new cables. And the Velcro tie wraps are in place already. We're going to change out the grapple fixture at the end of the boom. Right now, the grapple fixture at the very end is only for the shuttle arm. The station arm has to grab it in the middle. It doesn't make it as long of a reach, so we're going to switch those and replace the shuttle grapple fixture with a station grapple fixture when we're done with it, so that'll allow full use of the boom. And then if they come up with a need for it, they'll be able to put a sensor pack on. From a camera view standpoint, the station's pretty well outfitted with cameras. They have pretty good coverage of what they need to see. It's really to get that extra reach of a crewman in case you have to do any big replacement tasks. One of the advantages, this lets you get to the outer segment solar arrays, and it also lets you get pretty far back on the Russian segment from the U.S. base of the SSRMS, the station arm. So it gives them some extra reach in case they have a problem. There's no planned use for it, but it's a good insurance policy.
Over here.
Mark Boucher, Space Ref for either of the mics. Do you know what caused the tile damage on the side hatch?
Yeah, we do. It's there's a material called Armalon, which is a sort of a protective film that we put around the hatch to protect the seals of the hatch while it's open, and then once it goes closed, it just protects the seals and makes for essentially a better fit. Those particular sheets of material have to be removed before flight, of course. And so as they were coming out, one of them pulled off a previous repair. This piece of tile that was damaged was a previous repair. All of it came out, and so we just put a little surface coating on it, and we were good to go. So we know what caused it, and we fixed it, and good to go.
Right here.
Randy Avera, Interspace News, for Mr. Gerstenmaier. As the shuttle program comes to an end this summer, will NASA continue to do space shuttle main engine research and development down at Stennis?
We don't have any plans to continue with main engine testing, but we are starting to test some of the new engines that are coming for the new program, the J2X engines. There's some turbo pumps and some other runs that are going to be done here, I think in the next several months down at Stennis in that area. So there's no planned SSME work or shuttle main engine work, but there are some plans for some of the new LOX hydrogen systems that we're planning for the future vehicles that are coming down the road.
Seth Borenstein, AP again. For Gerst, you mentioned 512 and 529 for the two last losses of foam. You said the first two were small losses prior to aerodynamic sensitive times. What time were those, and were they any big? And for Mike Moses, did I quite get you right? Did you say you missed the launch, essentially?
The first loss was at 2 minutes and 6 seconds, and it looked like it was on the ice frost ramp area. And the other one was 2 minutes and 14 seconds. It was on the left-hand bipod area of the tank. And the aerodynamic sensitive time is 2 minutes and 15 seconds. So one was just 1 second in front, and the other one was 9 seconds in front.
And so for me, no, I didn't miss the launch. You know, the main engines light up 6 seconds before the boosters go. And so in that 6 seconds, I'm watching the TV, not looking out the window, where most of the, well, actually it's probably half and half. The guys on the consoles are looking at their data. They're not looking out the window, but the management types tend to look out the window. So for that first 6 seconds, I was watching the TV, and for the first 3 or 4 of those seconds, I was watching the wrong TV channel. So I did get turned around in time to see the boosters light and the ship lift off.
We'll wrap it up with a question from Jim.
Jim Siegel, Celebration Independent News again. Bill Gerstenmaier, there was a report in the media a few days ago about I guess I would say a proposal being knocked around in NASA that hadn't been floated yet to Congress, but in essence it was taking the Orion capsule, putting it on top of an external tank or something like that, putting rocket motors at the bottom of it, having a couple of rocket boosters attached to this as a whole assembly. Is that a viable thing that's really been being considered, and would it represent a kind of continuation of the shuttle program from your point of view?
You know, kind of what we're doing, or what the new programs are looking at is, you know, we've been asked to write a report for Congress, of which we gave an initial version to Congress in January, and then we're due to give them another update sometime in the June-July timeframe. So the teams have been off looking at a whole variety of different configurations of hardware that we could put together to essentially go fly. And it's not only hardware, but we're also looking at what workforce is needed, what skill bases around in the country to go support these things, which sub-vendors are available, that's smaller providers of hardware components. We're looking at all those, and then we're trying to also see the missions we want to go do. You know, we're trying to have the ability to potentially go to the moon, go to a near-Earth asteroid, go to geosynchronous orbit, potentially do some repair of a satellite in geosynchronous orbit. We may go to Mars ultimately. We have a whole bunch of destinations. So the idea is, how can we build a sense of generic system that can support all those objectives in the future? But the balancing act is, we have to not build the perfect system that supports the future, but it takes us forever to get there. So we're trying to look and see what systems we can use today, how we can advance those systems, move them forward, put them together, and then do something fairly soon. Not necessarily a test flight, but actually a demonstration or a mission kind of activity. So we're looking to try to actually focus some early mission things, potentially something to a geosynchronous orbit, potentially around the moon kind of thing, those kind of things that would not only check out the hardware that we're building, but also give us real data that pushes us in the right direction. So what the teams are doing is they're evaluating a ton of concepts. So there's a whole bunch of different analysis going on, a bunch of different evaluations going on, and we're trading all these things back and forth. You know, we've been doing it for the past several months, so every once in a while one of those gets pushed out to the media takes it and then provides us their feedback on what it is, and we evaluate that feedback along with the stuff we get from our engineers, and sometimes we have the exact same feeling that the media does, and then you know where that configuration stands. So we continue to work through all these options and trades. We'll do that probably for the next month or so, and then we'll try to get a plan to Congress of where we want to go and how we want to move forward. But we see a real need to do this in an expedient manner to capture the great work we've got in place, the great hardware we've got, but also give us a plan that is really supportable in the future that allows us to keep doing this next stage, which is to do exploration beyond low Earth orbit, and that's where we're headed. So near term, the focus is really on station, to utilize the heck out of station and really get good research on station. We'll continue to do that with our Russian partners, but then at the same time build a concrete plan on how we're going to get beyond low Earth orbit, and that's what we're working on over the next couple of months.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all for coming. Now that Space Shuttle Endeavour has launched, NASA Television will be providing nearly continuous coverage of the mission through landing here on NASA TV, and also you can keep up with the mission on our website at www.nasa.gov/shuttle. And a reminder that here on NASA Television, immediately following this briefing, in this same very room at Kennedy Space Center, will be a briefing with Congresswoman Gabrielle Gifford's staff. Once again, thank you for coming.